Morning, everybody. Hope everybody's doing okay. Got another good one for you today. Um, Before we get started, we'll take this opportunity to encourage you. If God is putting something on your heart, share it. If it's something you're reading and it spoke to you, share about it. If it's something somebody else was talking about that spoke to you, share it. It's okay to hear the same thing over and over again. The Bible's good at telling us the same thing over and over again. Maybe I just want to encourage everybody to share. If there's something on your heart, share it. Um, Lesson today is pretty good. It's titled Mercy. So let's just dive right in. Romans chapter 11, verse 17 through 32, I believe, is the verses that we're going to. So I'm going to read the verses right off the bat. Now, if some of the branches were broken off, and you, though a wild olive branch, were grafted in among them, and have come to share in the rich root of the cultivated olive tree, do not brag that you are better than those branches. But if you do brag, you do not sustain the root, but the root sustains you. Then you will say, branches were broken off so that I might be grafted in. True enough, they were broken off by unbelief, but you stand by faith. Do not be arrogant, but be afraid. For if God did not spare the natural branches, he will not spare you either. Therefore, consider God's kindness and severity. Severity towards those who have fallen, but God's kindness towards you, if you remain in his kindness. Otherwise, you too will be cut off. And even they, if they do not remain in unbelief, will be grafted in, because God has the power to graft them in again. For if you were cut off from your native wild olive, and against nature were grafted into a cultivated olive tree, how much more will these natural branches be grafted into their own olive tree? So that you will not be conceited, brothers, I do not want you to be unaware of this mystery. A particular hardening has come to Israel, until the full member of the Gentiles has come in, and in this way all Israel will be saved, as it is written. The liberator will come from Zion, he will turn away godlessness from Jacob, and this will be my covenant with them, when I take away their sins. Regarding the gospel, they are enemies for your advantage, but regarding election, they are loved because of the patriarchs, since God's gracious gifts and callings are irrevocable. As you once disobeyed God, but now have received mercy through their disobedience, so they too have now disobeyed, resulting in mercy to you, so that they also now may receive mercy. For God has imprisoned all in disobedience, so that he may have mercy on all. And man, as I studied this lesson, it really spoke to me. Let's verses 17 through 21. Mercy led us in. We didn't do it. God's mercy did. God made a way for us to be brought in to the kingdom. And it was because of it was because of his mercy. And I kind of knew this, but this was kind of cool to revisit about all this grafting in branches. And I mean, if you think about that, that takes a long time. If you first off, I mean, it's hard to think about how that can even be. You cut a branch off of this tree and graft it into this other tree. What? I mean, it's you don't think about that. That doesn't, it's not in our normal thoughts, but it is possible. I guess gardeners do it all the time. I thought about our garden that we have, and pruning, which that you think about the grafting in a branch. That's something pretty amazing. If you take a branch off one tree, put it in another tree. I mean that's a good symbol right there to show God's mercy. I mean I don't know how else to put that. Verses 22 through 24 made me think a lot of pruning. You cut off the bad, And when it talks about a cultivated olive tree, that's what it is. It's a tree. It's a tree that's been groomed and pruned all its life. And I actually Googled how long an olive tree lives. An olive tree can live up to 1,500 years. What? The average. They said the average life for an olive tree was 500 years. I can't even think about a tree that's 500 years old, much less one that's 1,500. And I think the significance of the olive tree in this parable was to point out that the church lives on. That's why we're here today, because of the early church in Acts, and we've been going through Acts, and that's what made me think about it. What the parable of the olive tree was for. The church is long lived. The church is going to live on. And the things that we do to the things that we sow into the church are going to live on. And it takes more than just one generation to raise an olive tree. It takes more than just one generation to keep a church, to sustain a church. It takes multiple generations, and that's something we got to think about. We always live in the here and now, and we got to think about future generations. And I think that's why Paul used the parable of an olive tree. Olive tree lives a long time. Something else in verses 22 through 24 pointed out, even though a branch is cut off, if it doesn't remain in unbelief, it can be grafted back in. And that's something that only God's mercy can explain. If we think about that, in our own power, we cut a branch off of a tree, that branch is dead. It's not going to live anymore, especially if it stays off the tree for a long time. But God's word teaches us, that's not the case with people. God's power and God's mercy goes way beyond what we can understand. This word tells us that something can fall away from the church and from the faith, and as long as it doesn't stay there, it can be brought back in. That was amazing to me to read that part and really think about what mercy can do. And then the last section of verses, I had to read over these a few times, and then it kind of, if anybody has any thoughts on these last few verses, 25 through 32, be my guest. Go ahead and chime in and tell us about it. But what I got from these last few verses is this. It was all part of God's plan, right? It's Paul telling this, and he's speaking to the Romans, because Paul was Roman, and he wanted them to really understand. He wanted to really understand God's plan and how mercy fit in. And he was talking about how Israel's heart, God allowed Israel to harden their hearts, and because of that, God could use mercy to invite in the Gentiles. That opened the door for everybody else. That's the Jews are, the church pretty much, and the Gentiles are everybody else. That's the analogy. That's the parable of the Jews and the Gentiles. But because God allowed their hearts to be hardened, that opened the door for the Gentiles. And those verses are talking about when God's work is done with the Gentiles, that's when he's going to redeem everything. I don't know if he's talking about the last days or if he's just talking about something else. But he's pointing out this was God's plan. This was God's plan. He was going to use mercy to when Israel rebelled, to open that door for the Gentiles. And he was also going to use mercy, that if the Jews did not remain in their rebellion against Jesus and against God, he's going to bring them back in. However long it took, he was gonna have mercy on them when they come back. And then that really spoke to me, because that's pretty much my story. I spent almost 30 years of my life not living for God and made a mess of things. But by God's mercy, he still brought me in. He was able to take that mess, that rebellion, and turn it into salvation. And this lesson titled Mercy it just really spoke to me personally, because that's my story. God had mercy on me. I wasn't living how I was supposed to live, and God's mercy made a way. Jesus dying on the cross made a way for me to come to salvation. And even we if you've been a Christian long enough, you've seen people go through that and then fall away. You've seen people get away from church that's been in church. And this lesson says, have mercy on them. No matter who it is, if they're lost and haven't never come to Christ, have mercy on them. If they have come to Christ and they've fallen away, have mercy on them. Mercy goes both ways. We have mercy on the ones that never received it, but also have mercy on the ones that have, that just forget what it's all about. And this was to me was a really good lesson. And as always, I want to go back and read the questions. So 17 through 21 ask the question, what makes religious pride so crippling and dangerous? The next set of verses, 22 through 24, asked the question, how would you describe the balance between God's severity and his kindness? And then the last section, verses 25 through 32, asked a couple of questions, actually. How does a person's relationship with Jesus affect the way they view others? How could nurturing a heart of gratitude to God change how a person views others? And another question, what does God's plan, being irrevocable, tell us about his character? So I encourage you, read those verses. If you have a Sunday school book, read the book. There's so much in the book that I didn't get to put into this video, but I encourage you, read it, study it. If God speaks something to you about it, share it. That's our purpose as a Christian. That's what we're supposed to do. That's what Sam's doing. He's God's speaking to him and he's sharing it. Anybody can do this. Anybody can share what God is putting on their hearts. Anyway, hope you guys have a great day, and see you next time.